Welcome back everyone. We are here today to install a ChaseBays dual piston brake booster delete on this JZX100. This guide will go for the JZX90 as well. So follow along, we're going to get this installed. Let's go. First things first, we're going to go over everything you're going to get in the kit. First thing is the brake booster delete itself. This is the dual piston unit. It is going to come with the pedal adapter. This will bolt onto your factory pedal. This will connect to it, and then you will insert that there. That'll be the complete unit in the car. We'll run through the lines just so you can kind of get an idea exactly what goes where. So your longest line with the ChaseBays label will go from the front port here down to the left front of the vehicle, the fender well. The next line, the second to longest line, will go from the out of the bias valve, and that'll go to the two hard lines that are running underneath the car. You utilize this F fitting to connect to those two hard lines under the car. The shortest line of the kit will connect to the dual banjo, and that'll go to the right front wheel well. That is all the parts that you'll need to get this done. Now we're going to show you how to get all the old stuff out of this car. First thing we want to do is we want to get the fluid out of this master cylinder so that we're not spilling brake fluid all over the place. Brake fluid is corrosive, so it can peel paint and things like that. If you do spill some, just go ahead and wipe it up as quick as you can. It's not going to just like peel your paint right away, but just make sure you clean it up really well. I like to use some brake parts cleaner, make sure you get it all cleaned off. I like to use either one of these or like a suction pump, and then just have a reservoir or some sort of fluid catcher that you can put fluid into that you're sucking out of this thing. Okay, now that we have most of that fluid out of there, we're going to go ahead and start taking off lines. What I like to do is make sure I pack some rags and stuff right underneath the master cylinder before I start taking off the line. For this step, you're going to need a 10mm wrench. You're going to just undo these lines. There's two of them, and then they run over to the ABS unit, which we will also be removing from this car. While you're here, that same 10mm, you can undo this throttle cable bracket. Now, if you do have this bracket, you won't be using it anymore. The new dual piston doesn't have a provision to bolt that. It's no big deal. You still got this guy and a couple others there. It's really not going to cause any issues. We also want to go ahead and remove the vacuum source that goes over to the intake manifold. What you'll do is you'll just remove that vacuum line completely. We're going manual brakes, man. No more vacuum line. You just want to make sure that you take a vacuum cap and you plug off the port on the manifold itself. That way you don't have a big vacuum leak. To take that vacuum line off, some sort of pliers, channel locks, flat pliers, whatever. Take off the hose clamp there. Go ahead and pull that off the booster. And then you got two brackets that are holding the hard line. There are two 10mm, and then there's a ground I see over here. So you'll undo these 10mm, and then I'm just gonna move this ground over to the firewall instead of on the bracket itself. Here you can see we went ahead and moved this ground that was on this bracket before. We just connected it straight to the firewall instead. Just make sure you clean off any paint behind there. You wanna make sure you get a good ground here. And then you're going to also take off this remaining hose clamp and pull this vacuum assembly, toss it in the bin. Continuing on, disconnecting everything from the master. We have 2 lines that are running over to the ABS unit, so we're going to get those off as well. The soft lines, just use a hose clamp, undo those, and pull those off. If you don't care about them, you can also just cut them off, no big deal. And then lastly, you have an electrical connector. Undo that. You won't be using that as well. That disconnects everything from the master cylinder. So now what we need to do is get inside the car and unbolt the brake booster and unhook the pedal so we can pull this out of the car. Okay, we're inside the car here. I'm just going to run through taking apart this knee bolster. First thing you want to do is go ahead and pull this trim out of the car. That just pops out. Just take a flathead, kind of pry around the side. It just pops out. It's just got those 2 clips there. And the plug, so undo that. That'll expose a screw here. You'll undo that screw. These are all Phillips. You'll undo that one. There's another one right there, one right there, and then one up in here. There's a little cover you take off here, pop that cover off, and then you'll get to that screw. That'll loosen up this entire knee bolster. And then you kind of just got to pull on it. It'll drop down. It's got a little clip on this very right side. So you just undo that. This is going to give us a little bit better access down to, it's kind of tough to film in here, but the pedal area down here. Just give us a little bit more room to work. So I'm going to finish getting the rest of this out of here because a lot of times you're going to find some wiring and stuff that's holding things together. So we're going to unplug all this stuff, get the bolster out of the way, and then we'll get the brake booster unhooked and then pull it out of the car. Okay, so now that we have the knee bolster out of the way, there's also like an air tube that runs in here. You'll take that out and then you'll get access to the pedal. Here you can see we have the clevis pin, so we're just going to go ahead and pull this little pin here. Just that guy, grab a pair of pliers, pull it out, and then just slide the clevis pin out. Alright, now that we have the pedal disconnected from the brake booster clevis, we need to remove 4 nuts to get the booster off the firewall. You can see them here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. They are a 12 millimeter, so you'll need to use a 12 millimeter socket. I'm going to use a long extension with a 12 millimeter wobbly to get those out. I'm not going to film that because I'm under the car, but you get the gist. Go ahead and take those 4 bolts out, and then you'll be able to pull the booster out the other side, and we'll show you that. Now that we have those 4 bolts or nuts taken off on the other side, we can pull this booster out of here. You're gonna have to kind of wiggle it out. You got the lines and stuff still on the way, but it will come out of there. There we go. No more booster. Next, we're gonna move on to getting all of these hard lines out of the car and pulling the ABS unit. Okay, now you have the ABS unit. It's on the opposite side of the brake booster. So you're gonna undo all of these lines, take all of these hard lines, take them out. We are going to connect to the metal hard lines down below for the rear brake circuit. So don't worry about these ones. We're just gonna delete all of this stuff. They run all the way across over there. Then there's one that runs into the fender well there. So you gotta pull that wheel off, undo that, pull the line out, get it out of your way. There's gonna be some clips that hold everything onto the firewall. You have 2 ways you can go about it. If you want to save the lines, take your time, you know, undo all the clips, pull the lines out. You're probably gonna have to bend them just a little bit to get them out of there. The other option is cut them. It makes it a lot easier to pull these things out, so you can just cut like right down here, and then you can pull that whole line set down across that way and out of the car. And then same thing for these running down below. You can just kind of cut them and then deal with the stuff down below. I'm going to show you what the hard lines on the bottom look like, so you know exactly what you're pulling and what you're not pulling. So for the lines on the rear, you can see this junction here. You're going to utilize these two lines, 1, 2. Those will connect to that black F fitting that we showed you earlier. Everything above that, going that way to the top, hard line wise, can be removed. So you are only keeping these two lines here at this junction, so you can remove everything else above that. Okay, so pulling the ABS unit, another reason why I like to cut the lines is it kind of pinches off these hard lines and mitigates how much is actually going to be leaking out of this thing. It's still going to leak a little bit, but not too bad. So it's kind of hard to see this thing in the car, so I figured shooting it here is best. You got 2 connectors. This sits in there like so. So you've got 2 connectors there, a plethora of lines, and then you have a 10 mil here and a 10 mil on the back side. Undo those 2 and then just pull this straight out. Once you have that out, you have all this space here. You can get rid of this bracket if you want to. I think we might leave it just because it does hold some wiring and things. So we're gonna leave those. I did cut those 2 rear lines. I need to get down below and undo them and take them the rest of the way out. And then we need to get into our wheel wells and then undo those where they go through. Kind of hard to see down there, but they go through the wheel well there. So we just need to pull those, and then we can start installing the ChaseBays parts. Okay, so in the fender well here, you're just gonna have a 10 millimeter here, and this is loose. Normally it goes in this bracket. Looks like that's been hammered maybe for some angle and stuff, but in most cases you're going to have a bracket. This bracket's going to be holding this line with a C-clip, and then you'll just undo this 10 millimeter from this caliper line and then pull the hard line out of here, and then we'll get the new ChaseBays line plumbed in here. As mentioned before, you just need to have these 2 hard lines. So we went ahead and we undid the 10 millimeter nuts there, and then took the 10 millimeter out of the center of the bracket there, and now the hard lines above can go ahead and be pulled out. These will remain, and the F fitting will connect to these 2. I'll show you that here in just a moment. Now that we have the factory step out, brake booster, ABS, and all the hard lines, we can start installing the ChaseBays parts. First and foremost, we're going to install the brake booster delete itself. On the JZX, you're going to have to clearance the firewall here. You can see the master cylinder sits up a little bit higher in this mounting plate, so we need to make sure we clear enough room for this piston to travel through the firewall freely. Now that we have that firewall notched, we can take our brake booster delete, slide it right into the firewall. You're going to take the 4 nuts that were on the studs of the brake booster delete, put them on the inside. You're going to need a 13 millimeter socket to tighten those nuts up. I'm not really going to film that. It's the same thing as taking the brake booster out. 4 nuts, tighten them up, and then I'll show you how to set up the pedal adapter and get that all squared away. Now that we have the brake booster delete in the car, we're going to start setting up our lines. Before you do that, what I recommend doing is tightening your banjo bolts. This one should be tight, the one for the rear port, but they do leave this double banjo loose, so just make sure you tighten that up before you get to fully plumbing this thing. The first line we're going to install is the line with the yellow ChaseBays label. This line is going to go to the left front wheel well. So we're going to install this line on the bottom port of the double banjo, and then it has some fire sleeve. You're going to make sure you put that in the area where the exhaust is, because you're going to run this back behind the engine and into the hole that goes into the firewall, or into the fender well. So we're going to get that routed. Okay, so for the first line, we've got it hooked up to that bottom port on the banjo. Then it runs back behind the engine. You can see the fire sleeve right there, right where the exhaust comes by. So just make sure you get that routed there good. And what I did is I popped this little rubber grommet out of here and then fed it onto the line. It's a little tough to see in there. As I mentioned with the grommets, I just popped it out, and then we're just gonna feed it onto the line before we install it into the car. It does take a little bit of persuasion. These lines are obviously a little bit bigger than our hard lines that previously went through there, but they can be slid on there. So you want it looking something like that. Now you can feed it through the fender well, down into this right front area, and retain the factory grommet. And then our 90-degree fitting will go on the back facing port of the dual banjo here. Just like that. And then you'll hook up the fender well side the same way you did on the other side. Now our last line, we need to run for the rear brakes. It's going to go to that F fitting. We put those two hard lines on the F fitting. Now we're going to run the line from the out of the bias valve over to the left side of the vehicle, over the transmission and back of the engine, and connect to that F fitting. Your 90 fitting will go on the out of the bias valve. The straight fitting will go to the F fitting. Okay, now that we have the 90 side hooked up, I'm gonna raise the car up. I'm gonna connect the straight side and show you what the F fitting and all that looks like down below. All right, so down below here we got the F fitting. You can see the two hard lines going into the F, the two female ports, and then we got the -3 line running from the out over atop the transmission and to the male fitting on the F fitting. So that's what that should all look like. You kind of have to tweak these lines just a hair, kind of just get everything to line up real nice and get it all into place. Just take your time with it. You can cross thread these. Just make sure you're getting them threaded on nice and straight. Do not force it on with a wrench. If it doesn't go on by hand, it's not on right. All right, now that we have this all installed, we just want to go through and make sure we double check all of our connections, make sure they're nice and tight so you don't have any leaks when you go to start bleeding this thing. The next step is going to be to bleed the system. You're going to fill it up. You're going to start with the furthest away caliper from the master cylinder. Get a friend, put them in the car, have them pump the brakes, hold the brake, open the bleeder, close the bleeder. Do that a bunch of times. Go through all the calipers. Get the pedal fairly stiff. It'll start to feel pretty good. And then you're ready to go take it for a rip. If you have any questions, comment down below. I'll be happy to answer those for you. Like, share, subscribe if you'd like to. See you next time.